I was trying to... Whatever. Off. Okay. I forgot it was hot. Come on. I shouldn't make these. I shouldn't be allowed to make, I quit. I don't know. Hey everyone, it's me, Mike. Welcome back to Moby Dick Explained. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have a table now. I don't know what to do with my hands. I'm testing multiple microphones. You know, I hope it's, I hope it works. When we last checked in, Ishmael had just signed on to the Pequod, the whaling ship, after meeting the colorful owner duo of Peleg and Bildad. But we still have a fair bit of business to take care of here on land. Let's dive into Chapter 17, the Ramadan. The starting chapters of Moby Dick, which we are still in, even though in my book I think I'm on like page 100, tend to play out like some kind of buddy comedy or an adventure story. There's clean, simple exposition, we meet new characters, and the story moves forward with a decent sense of pace. It's not really until later that the story begins to kind of unravel and become something more than just the tale of two guys who went whaling. In fact, as we'll see later, it's kind of barely a story about that. But even these early chapters, as they're doing the job of getting us moving, have a lot of deeper themes. Chapter 17 is a great example. It opens with Ishmael telling us that he was expecting Queequeg's Ramadan, fasting, ritual, whatever, to go on all day. So he avoided disturbing him until the evening. Ishmael takes religion very seriously, especially his own. But again, we get this glance at a person who's trying to make room for others. Other people, other beliefs, other perspectives. He says, well, ASMR. He says, I cherish the greatest respect towards everybody's religious obligations, never mind how comical, and could not find it in my heart to undervalue even a congregation of ants worshiping a toadstool. Basically, no matter what people believe, Ishmael thinks they deserve respect in their beliefs. And though he hints that Queequeg's beliefs might be wrong, calling them comical, he seems to understand that at the core there's something all believers have in common. And heaven have mercy on us all, Presbyterians and pagans alike, for we are all somehow dreadfully cracked about the head and sadly need mending. It's not quite an acknowledgement that all religions are equally fake or equally real, or that Christianity is as absurd and comical as worshiping Yojo, but it does speak to maybe a rumbling underneath the certainty of Ishmael's faith. Kind of a tingle that says, come on. We've seen throughout the book already that Ishmael is sort of grappling with his faith, and often Queequeg is used as sort of a mirror that Ishmael holds up to himself. He looks at Queequeg, and Queequeg exists as a character, as a point of reference, which he and we use to better define Ishmael. Queequeg's beliefs, as comical as they may be, are the mirror image of Ishmael's. And it's hard to believe that somebody who's as smart as Ishmael could look at Queequeg's beliefs as comical without developing some suspicion of his own. This line could also be his way of saying there's something missing in all of us, and we all turn to different things to fill the space. We are all cracked about the head, and we all need mending. Immediately after Melville presents us with this heady thought, we enter into another Queequeg Ishmael slapstick sitcom ordeal. Ishmael becomes convinced that because Queequeg won't answer the door, even though his Ramadan should be concluded by now, based on Ishmael knowing zero about it, something horrible must have happened. An assumption that leads to an extended sequence where Ishmael is running up and down the stairs, trying to find the landlady, trying to get the door open, trying to get her to open the door, trying to get an axe so that he can chop the door down. And there's even a dark joke in here where the landlady, upon realizing Queequeg has taken his harpoon into the room, concludes he must have killed himself, as apparently so did somebody else in this inn. Running to a little closet under the landing of the stairs, she glanced in. Why did I act it out? And returning, told me that Queequeg's harpoon was missing. "He's killed himself," she cried. "It's unfortunate Stiggs done over again. There goes another counterpane. Betty, go to Snarls the painter and tell him to paint me a sign with 'No suicides permitted here' and 'No smoking in the parlor.' Might as well kill both birds at once." The back and forth of this little passage is crazy, where she's simultaneously upset about Queequeg, but she's also thinking about how he's ruined the sheets. Remember, we learned that a counterpane is a sheet before. And her having the presence of mind to make a sign it's funny enough. But to add to the sign, "No smoking," to kill two birds with one stone, implies that people are killing themselves at this inn with the same frequency at which they are smoking, and that those are similar problems. It's just this weird little bit of absurd comedy, and it kind of echoes Ishmael's argument with the innkeeper at the Spouter Inn. After Ishmael literally bashes the door in, he discovers Queequeg is still just sitting there conducting his silent ritual, and he cannot be roused. He cannot be distracted. I have foolishly printed this quote onto 2 pages. Closing the door upon the landlady, I endeavored to prevail upon Queequeg to take a chair, but in vain. There he sat, and all he could do, for all my polite arts and blandishments, he would not move a peg, nor say a single word, nor even look at me, nor notice my presence in the slightest way. While this is definitely a funny little cacophony of chaos, there's a pretty big theme in here we should remember. The stark contrast between Ishmael, the educated, civilized, Christian, possibly white man, and Queequeg, the pagan savage. The mirror. Ishmael is a mess. He cannot imagine going a day without food, or sitting still for this long, or being content in silence. He is a maelstrom of anxiety and insecurity and fear, and we've seen it bubble up many times. And Queequeg is always this calm center. He's never vexed, he's never worried, he's never embarrassed, even when he's totally out of place. He has a sort of Zen fortitude, whereas Ishmael is always in his own head, always overanalyzing, always overthinking, always panicking and knocking the door down when his friend is trying to pray. They are very stark counterbalances thematically. And the contrast directly challenges Ishmael, the narrator's idea of who in this situation is really the wild one. We should ask ourselves, what is Melville's intent? What is he, as the author, telling us or questioning by making these two characters act the way they do? The answer to this question, and to pretty much any other question about reader interpretation or author intent, because one doesn't necessarily beget the other, is, what do you think? What do you think? That interpretation belongs to us. Nobody can tell us if we're right or if we're wrong, but we cannot be passengers. We have to be aware that creative people make creative decisions for a reason. Not just in Moby Dick, but in all of the media we consume. Why did the author choose these words? Why did the newspaper choose this headline. Why does the normally buttoned up, suit-wearing news anchor suddenly have his sleeves rolled up and messy hair when he's standing in front of the aftermath of a tornado? Nothing is accidental. So as we keep moving forward, don't forget the meta layer. Whenever Ishmael asks a question about society or race or religion, remember that Melville is also asking the question and possibly giving us his answer. And if we're not present, we run the risk of accepting the answer without processing why it's being given to us. Which is not to say that Melville is a propagandist or that he's malevolent, but some people are. And when we forget to consider intent, we run the risk of allowing people to imprint their subtext into our minds. Moving on. Eventually, Ishmael stops trying to bother Queequeg, and he goes downstairs and has some dinner and listens to some cool sailing stories. It has a little night, just a little night. And then at the end of his little night, he goes back upstairs where Queequeg is still praying. And while Ishmael does try a little more to kind of break through to Queequeg, he realizes it's not going to work. So eventually he goes to bed. He does drape his jacket over Queequeg so he doesn't get cold, which is such a cute detail. And when he wakes up, as the sun rises, Queequeg ends his ritual and returns to the world of the living and present. Ishmael seizes this moment and tries to talk some sense into Queequeg about the idea of Ramadans and Lents and religious rituals that require personal sacrifice. When a man's religion becomes really frantic, when it is a positive torment to him, and fine, makes this earth of ours an uncomfortable inn to lodge in, then I think it high time to take that individual aside and argue the point with him. Ishmael wants Queequeg to snap out of it, and he lays out the grand history of religion to make a case that for all the Ramadans and Lents and sacrifices in the world, the only thing that's ever come of it is the misery of man. And he takes this a step further with this idea that maybe it's because of all of these Ramadans and Lents and sacrifices that religions have such a dim, apocalyptic, and dour view of the world and what comes after it. I printed this one on 2 sheets as well. I suck at this. Besides, argued I, fasting makes the body cave in, hence the spirit caves in. And all thoughts born of a fast must necessarily be half-starved. This is the reason why most dyspeptic religionists cherish such melancholy notions about their hereafters. There's an idea here that if you are not full, your view of the world also won't be full. If you are hungry, if you are empty, then the way you see the world is gonna be different than if you were comfortable and full. It's an interesting critique to hear from Ishmael to take issue when, in his words, religion becomes a torment, given that Ishmael is clearly tormented by his religion, and that torment is driven by the fact that he is empty, and in turning to religion, he has found only more emptiness. Queequeg listens, but he seems to understand that of the two of them, only Ishmael is floundering. He looked at me with a sort of condescending concern and compassion, as though he thought it a great pity that such a sensible young man should be so hopelessly lost to evangelical pagan piety. This is another example of that conflict or contrast between civil and uncivil, and how each of us, from our own perspective, can dismiss or pity people with views we don't quite understand. From the perspective of a Christian, white, modern society, Queequeg's rituals and beliefs might seem foolish or weird or wrong. But that same Christian, modern, white world is probably just as weird and foolish to Queequeg. But also, this image of Ishmael, who we know as a sort of frantic searcher, struggling to understand himself, pleading with Queequeg, who we know as a kind of calm rock of certainty, reinforces that mirror of these two opposites. Ishmael has gone on and on about the suffering and the sort of self-flagellation of religion. Flagellation. He's giving Queequeg a history lesson on all religions, and he's saying, this didn't really amount to much. So you don't need to put yourself through this. But what we've just seen in this chapter is that Queequeg doesn't seem to have minded his Ramadan at all. And Ishmael is the one who has spent the whole day in agony. So of course Queequeg is gonna look at Ishmael with pity. Ishmael has it figured out, just not for himself. Anyway, after all this drama, the boys head downstairs, they have a nice breakfast, some of that famous chowder, and then they set off to the Pequod so that Queequeg can sign on. And that's what we'll talk about next time when we read chapter 18, His Mark? When we read chapter 18, His Mark. Until I see you again, please be good, be kind, don't kick any puppies, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the Patreon and leave comments. I want to know how you're doing with Moby Dick. It's such an interesting and compelling book. I don't want to just tell you what I think. I want to know what you think. So, let me know.